Hey everybody, it's Brent Schlemmer. Welcome to the BS Gear Show, episode number 3. Today we're talking about the 12-string bass. I get a lot of questions about this when I play it out in public. I get a lot of people coming up to me and going, what is that thing? So I thought maybe I'd do a little show to explain what's actually going on with this wonderful monster that we call the 12-string bass. So what is a 12-string bass? Now, a regular 4-string bass, 4 strings, they're tuned E, A, D, G, and those fundamental low notes are exactly what's going on with the 12-string bass. In fact, those 4 strings are on there as part of the 12. So what you've got is you've got E, A, D, G, that low bass string fundamental that you always have with your bass guitar, but directly next to each of those strings is another pair of strings an octave higher. So same note, but in different octave. So you have E plus 2 octave higher E strings, which corresponds to the same notes as you would have on a regular electric guitar, not a bass, just a regular electric guitar. So what you're playing when you play E on the 12-string bass is you are actually playing an E note, that's the regular bass string, and you are playing then 2 electric guitar pitched E notes as well. So when it comes out of the amp, what you have is essentially 3 separate instruments that sound like a huge, huge single note. Now, what that does is that it gives you the ability to fill an incredible amount of sonic space that you could not do with a regular 4-string guitar or 4-string bass. You get the equivalent of being 3 people at once. Now, that does lend itself to being considerably more difficult to finger when you talk about needing finger strength and whatnot to play the guitar or play the bass. You can triple that playing the 12-string bass. It's a considerably more difficult instrument strength-wise to play. So it does take a little bit of practice. Personally, I had been playing bass for about 20 some odd years by the time I'd bought my 12-string, and I thought, surely this won't take me that long to get used to. It's just another bass. But once I got it in my hands, it definitely was something that I needed to build up to. It took me probably a good solid month to be able to play it for more than about 15 or 20 minutes at a time. The string pressure required and the strength required was something that I had to actually work up to. These days, I'm still good for maybe an hour and a half or 2 at the most if I'm only playing some very basic bass lines. My current music project with Megan Christine Martin and the 1900, I am playing 12-string bass about 80% of the time. The rest of the time I play a baritone guitar tuned A to A, but that's a completely different show, and we will talk about that at another time. So it does take a little bit of extra strength. It takes a lot more pressure to be able to play this instrument cleanly. The other thing that this bass generally requires, at least to my ears, is the fact that you need to have that signal from the instrument itself split into 2 so that it can be covered in the way that it needs to be. And what by that I mean, my signal goes to a bass amp, as you would expect, but it also goes to a guitar amp. And so I can process those 2 things differently and give myself what actually amounts to a 2 or 3 amp setup. If I had my way, I have 4 amps, but there's no way in a live situation that that's practical to take out and play 4 amplifiers, a large pedal board, and all that for a standard show. If you dig around on my Facebook page, you can find a video that I did called The Rig Rundown, And that's where I went through my ultimate setup for the 12-string bass, including my pedal board and my amplifiers and all of that good stuff that the nerds really like to check into. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you go check it out. And that will give you a better idea of what actually has to happen in order for the 12-string bass to be utilized to its full capacity. It is an unusual instrument. You do not see it very often. In fact, I don't think that in Indianapolis here that there is another player playing one out in the live arena. I've talked to several people as I've played out in the last year or so with Megan, and no one's even really seen this instrument. It's extremely rare to find 12-string bass players. There are a number of notable ones, and you would recognize the tone of the 12-string bass if you heard it on a recording. The most notable and probably the most famous 12-string bass usage was in Pearl Jam's Jeremy. That opening riff is Jeff Ament playing his 12-string bass, which, by the way, was a Hamer. Little bit of history on this crazy instrument. The first one was built in 1977 by Joel Danzig at Hamer Guitars in Illinois. You can see Joel here with the, it says the first Hamer 12-string, 1978. But the idea came from Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick. He had Joel build him a 12-string bass, which they called the quad bass. You can see that it has that weird little matrix in there. That's because you could send each individual string to a separate output through there was a little linking control box that this thing hooked into that split that signal off into 4 different ways. You could process it differently depending on what you wanted to do with each individual string. Now, Tom played those quad basses for quite a number of years because they were literally the only one you could get. There were no other 12-string basses out there. So you cannot talk about the 12-string bass without talking about the influence of Tom Peterson and Cheap Trick. Now, Tom played a number of instruments over the years, but was mostly known to play the Hamers. Those were the benchmark, the fantastic basses. They're really, really difficult to find now. Highly sought after by the 12-string players that are out there. There are a few still of us out there. Lots of people have kind of come around to that in the last few years. About 10 years ago, Tom switched over to a company called Waterstone and is playing here. That's the model that I play, the TP12. Tom Peterson, get it? TP. TP12 was his signature model that he played on tour. Those Waterstones were made in a bunch of different cool colors. You could get a lot of different variations on them depending on when you caught them. And he's just a great builder. Those were constructed in Korea, and Tom played them as his regular bass on tour for quite a few years. I picked mine up in about 2012 and got a great deal, found it on the Waterstone site as part of their summer special price, I guess it was. It was a quick catch that I found one night while I was just surfing the internet. I was like, ooh, those are on sale? Ordered one. Talked to the gentleman on the phone at like 11:30 at night. He was super accommodating and great company to work with. I really enjoy mine. Tom played them for a number of years. That being said, Tom has moved on since then to a considerably higher end instrument. He's now playing the Gretsch Custom Shop Tom Peterson model, which is a gorgeous bass, not too far removed from the Waterstone TP12 in construction, but the Gretsch is about $12,000, well out of the price range for me, obviously. I mean, I've never even had a car that cost that much, so to have a $12,000 instrument, amazing. Let's look at a little quick. I've got some great video that I found of Tom playing this instrument on tour. hear from Tom's bass itself here. So as you can see, this thing doesn't sound like anything you've ever really heard. Tom takes it to another level. He plays a lot of chordal stuff. He plays a lot of straight bass lines, but with that 3 strings per note, basically is what's happening here. With 3 strings per note, you get a considerably bigger tone, a considerably bigger sound to fill up the audio spectrum in a way that no other instrument can. So there's very few notable 12-string bass players. The rarity of the instrument, the difficulty of utilizing it, makes it so it's not very popular among bass players. Even though it has a really huge sonic space, not many people, A, are aware of it, and B, would step outside of their comfort zone to play such a muscular instrument. To me, one of the most notable players out there is Doug Pinnick from King's X. There's Doug playing his left-handed Waterstones. He's also most notably for playing the Hamers, simply because they're the most available out there. Also, Allman Brothers, Alan Woody has a signature 12-string model, but he's also known to play a 6-string tripled version or 18-string bass, which to me is crazy. That's quite a huge instrument. That neck must be monstrous. Of course, as mentioned before, Jeff Ament from Pearl Jam with his custom Hamer, and then Peter Hook from Joy Division or New Order plays an occasional 12-string part. And then, of course, you've got your illustrious host, me, playing with Megan Christine Martin and the 1900. In fact, the theme song from this show features that 12-string bass, and you can catch a little bit of it live. So, there you have that craziness. All right. Another 12-string bassist that you might like to check out, very current. He's doing an electronica-style project utilizing just a drum machine and a 12-string bass. He goes by the name Momo. His name's Michael Laredo. I would be remiss if I did not include at least a little bit of what he's got going on with his 12-string. Super unusual. Definitely shows the flexibility of the instrument when utilized to its full capacity with a massive pedal board. Check out Momo.
One, two, three, bass.
go find him on YouTube. He's got some really cool videos. He's done a lot of duet stuff with a lot of other bass players doing his thing mixed with their thing. Yeah, definitely go check him out. Momo. He's worth your time. We've talked about mainly the Hamers and the Waterstone instruments that are out there. You can find a few other brands that make 12-string basses. Currently being produced, there's really only about 3. That's the Waterstone, the Dean Rhapsody. You can find occasionally out there. I've seen a few in the wild in music stores. But for the most part, other than the standard Hamer, which you can find online used occasionally as well, the other notable instruments that are out there include the Chandler, Hiroshige Kid bass from Japan, and then the Music Vox, which you'll see with Alan Woody and Momo. So check those out. If you're looking for one, you can find it. Music Vox is probably the most available one that you can, at the very least, order and get one for yourself if you're looking to grab one. Those would probably be the most affordable, but there are a few out there occasionally. If you're a gear hunter, you can find one if you really try. So if you're interested in grabbing one, you're going to have to dig around a little bit, but it's worth the digging. So there you have it, the 12-string bass. I hope this answered some of your questions about what the hell is that thing that I get a lot of times when I play out live. I hope that answered all the questions. If you have other questions, feel free to message me. You can also make suggestions for future episodes of the BS Gear Show. If you've got an idea or a question about something you'd like to have answered, feel free to email me at brent@booksandbrews.com. Special shout out and thank you to B&B TV for having me on and making this show possible. So we'll see you next week right here on B&B TV for the BS Gear Show. I'm Brent Schlemmer. Have a good evening.